Keele Burgin is author of the best-selling memoir Wholly Unraveled, as well as storykeeper for Dr. Jane Goodall. As a coach, she works with women around the world, helping them to draw their stories out of the darkness. As she tells me in this interview, we all have our stories to tell, and they all matter. To learn more, be sure to listen to today's episode of the Fearless Storyteller podcast. Hello, and welcome to the Fearless Storyteller podcast. I'm your host, Ethan Freckleton. Have you ever noticed how fear stops us from creating and sharing our best work? Join the Fearless Storyteller as we explore the heart and soul of writing stories, songs, and scripts that sell with the people who write them. Each guest has their own unique hero's journey and insights into the intersections between limiting beliefs and success. Well, Keele Burgin, welcome to the Fearless Storyteller podcast.
Thank you for having me. Nice to be here.
Hey, my pleasure. So for people who may not know who you are, what would you like to share about yourself?
Let's see. I'm Keele. I live in a beautiful place called Boulder, Colorado. I am a storyteller. And more importantly, I love to bring the story out, help people bring their stories out. And what I really love about that is I have a firm belief that the stories that we keep inside that we're afraid to say out loud are the ones that limit us. And so I like to hear the ones that people don't want to say out loud. And I think that releases a lot of shame and fear and guilt, etc. So I've also done a lot of business stuff. I've taken one business public. And then I work in third world countries, helping women to tell their story, working on vocal empowerment. And I love doing that. And then I have a business called Be, and I named it Be so that it's really about being wherever you are. You can be mad, you can be worried, you can be happy, you can be joyful, you can be sensual, you can be whatever you are in that moment, and you are accepted. And I also wrote a book once about my own journey into healing and hope, coming from a really extremely isolated childhood growing up in a Catholic cult.
Yeah.
So I wrote a book about how I healed from that and became more on the spiritual journey, not necessarily religious, but spiritual journey.
Right. And that's called Wholly Unraveled?
Wholly Unraveled.
Nice little double.
You got it. You got it.
I'm catching on here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well done.
Well, let's talk about writing a memoir for a moment. Like, what prompted you to do that?
You know, I started writing poetry, 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like the emotions were just kind of seeping out at the edges of the paper. I would be doing anything. I'd be doing the dishes and whatever, and a line would come out at the strangest times. And so I think I was scared at first to write them down because a lot of them were about my trauma and about the abuse that happened to me. And then I just started writing them down. And as I was writing them down, I was leaving them all over the house. And my husband at the time, bought me a beautiful linen box and said, put them all in here. And so I started putting them in there, and then the box started filling up. And I had been working with women in third world countries to help tell their story for 25 years. And then I looked at myself in the mirror one day and thought, well, I haven't told my story. And so I got that box out and I started working it through all the pain. And at the end of the day, that became Wholly Unraveled.
Yeah. So what does that bring up for you to go there knowing that you're creating something for others to read?
My whole why, which I believe is fundamental to any business or anything you start, is you have to answer, why am I doing this? And my why is I really believe in the power of storytelling. And my why was we all have to tell our stories, and they all matter, especially, like I said, the ones you don't want to say out loud, because those are the ones that really need to be in the world.
Yeah.
And I had to go through a tremendous amount of trauma. And my goal is to take that trauma and make it into something beautiful for other people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. And, I noticed looking at reviews for the book, it's like the conversations you'd expect come up through the reviews, how people react, right? Do you read your reviews?
I do read my reviews. I love connecting with my readers. So yes, I read. I can't say I've read every one, but I've read a lot of them. And my bummer is I wish I could talk to them. I would love to talk to my readers.
Yeah. Well, maybe you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
I talked to a lot of them on the book tour and the NPR tour, and I still show up on Zoom whenever anyone wants me to, because really that's what I love the most, is the connection with the people, and hearing, thank you for writing that, because now I was able to, and then fill in the blank.
Yeah. Yeah. And I saw like this dichotomy in the reviews of like, everybody related to it, it seemed, who were comfortable reviewing, but, some were grateful and got the idea that you need to share your story to normalize it. And it seemed like others, maybe felt like it showed too much, which is interesting, because in that, as a fiction author, that's your goal, is to show and not tell, right? to achieve that emotional resonance and connection, and
Absolutely. But I also honor the reviews that say this was too much, because that person wasn't ready yet. That person had something happen to them, and something I wrote triggered that, and they're not ready to hear or read or see anything like that. And so that's their journey. And so, I mean, I had to do years and years of EMDR therapy to heal enough to talk about what happened to me.
Yeah. What's EMDR stand for?
Oh, EMDR. Oh gosh, it's the most incredible. For me, it was the most incredible trauma therapy. It stands for eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing.
Yeah. And like, that feeling of readiness to tell your story, does it like come like in layers as you do the work, or?
I think that's a great question. I absolutely think it comes in layers. Again, starting from poetry and just saying, I am uniquely qualified to write because I was told I have no voice. That was one of my first lines of a poem I wrote. And that helped me, because then I was like, wait, maybe I can write. It took me years to call myself a writer. That sounded like it was going to be way out there. And now to say I'm an author is just this whole other level of amazement to me. And so definitely in layers, definitely patient with yourself. My first version of Wholly Unraveled, I wrote the whole thing, my story, done, put it away, didn't know what I was going to do with it. And then I thought, oh, you know what I'll do? I'll write a few chapters at the end that are fiction, and then I can call it a fiction book. Because I was scared to put my story out there. It's very vulnerable to put yourself in the world like that. And then I realized I'd be a fraud if I did that. So I took those last 3 chapters out that were kind of silly anyway. And I sent it to my agent and said, here we go. So.
Yeah. And did you already have an agent at that point? Like, how did that unfold?
I actually gave it to my agent with the fiction in it. I sent it out and to some people with the fiction in it, and then I scrapped it, and then I said, oh, okay, here's the real one. And then I really got serious about getting an agent and sent it out. And what I loved is that I didn't tell anyone in the beginning that it was a memoir. And my agent, who's in LA, said, is this a real story? I thought, oh dear. I said, yes, it is. And so she's my agent, and we worked together, and she said, I want you to go away for 6 months and think about, are you ready to have this in the world?
Mm.
And I thought that was great advice. So I did that. I waited for 6 months, thinking about all aspects of it. And I came back with, I cannot ask other women to tell their story if I'm not going to tell mine.
Mm. Yeah.
So there it is.
Yeah.
Now it's international. So I'm taking that back.
Well, and so I imagine there are fears, both imagined and legitimate about putting something out like that. And so, to not sugarcoat it, like what did happen as a result of putting that out there?
Let's see. Amazing things happened. Amazing. I was not in touch with my family of origin at the time the book came out. I hadn't had base with them in years, 8 years maybe, except for my youngest brother, who I adore, and his beautiful wife and kids, but he's not in the book. So let's just say I've heard they're not happy about it. I think it's very difficult to think you can spill the family secrets and then not have repercussions. You have to be ready for that, and I was. But also something beautiful happened. A lot of beautiful things happened, but something beautiful in my family was that my youngest brother came to me. At first he said, I'm not going to read it. And I said, absolutely, don't feel any pressure to read it. And then several weeks later, it was actually on a Marco Polo, a video chat. And he said, thank you so much, because you just explained a part of me. And you answered all the questions that I didn't know how to ask.
Amazing. Yeah.
And so I'm really grateful for that. But, you have to be ready that it's going to be both. It's going to be positive and negative.
Sure. Probably things come up that probably require more support as well. But
absolutely.
Yeah. It's never easy or simple, is it?
Absolutely not. And you know what? It wouldn't be as rewarding if it was, right?
Yeah. Okay, so you kind of backed yourself into putting this out there in a sense, right? Because you were asking other people to tell their story. So can you talk about that work and how it came about and why?
Absolutely. There's two parts of it. There's my nonprofit work, and then there's my business, B. I'm going to focus a little bit about B. It came about because I myself was going through a tremendously difficult time, walking through a devastating divorce years ago. And I said to myself, I've got to get off the ground here. This is not okay. Because I'm strong, I'm resilient, but it really took me down. And so I decided to go to the Grand Canyon, and I decided to hike to the bottom of the Grand Canyon and leave my marriage there and then climb out to my new life. And I was fearful. I didn't feel deserving or worthy. And I was going with 11 other women I didn't know.
Yeah.
And I went, and what happened was so beautiful. Through the crazy hardest physical thing I've ever done. But we got there, and there were more challenges. We got to the Grand Canyon, and we heard that there was a government shutdown, and we wouldn't have access to rescue. And we wouldn't have access to the restrooms, and we wouldn't have access to the water stations. They might not be full. And we had to sign our life away and say, we're going anyway. And I was like, what am I doing? This is crazy. But we went anyway. And even that, just that trusting in myself, knowing that something was going to be on the other side of that, was so life-giving. And going with a group of women I didn't know, and know that I had to trust them, and know that, we had to carry each other. But at one point, one woman couldn't carry her backpack, and we had to carry it. We had to divide it and carry it. And some people ran out of water, and we had to share our water. And so out of that, I birthed B. Within 3 weeks of coming out of the canyon, I found out my book had sold to a major publisher in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And I started B with someone who was on that trip.
Mm.
And so B is about curating 12 women at a time to walk through a 6-month journey together.
Mm.
And it doesn't mean you have to be going through a devastating divorce. Some people are as happy as can be, and they're learning how to be happy.
Yeah.
So, but it's when you put these 12 women in a room,
yeah,
magic happens. And there's this beautiful accountability, and there's trust, and there's vulnerability, and there's, oh, that happened to you too, and you're okay? That happened to me too. So I hope that answers your question on some level.
Yeah, definitely part of it. And I love that you put that together in a way that emphasized the cohort and not necessarily the facilitator.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. One of the, literally one of our tenets for B is we are all the teacher and we are all the student.
Yeah.
It really just depends on the topic. I mean, I know coach is a big word out there, but we can all coach on some level.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to believe that in ourselves, that we're capable of doing that. And once you believe that in yourself and you see that it's happening in this small group and you think, wow, I do have wisdom on this topic. Wow, my trauma can help somebody else. Then there's real worthiness in that.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like it's easier to facilitate something from that perspective. But on the other hand, right, like, because otherwise it's about my story and not about everybody's story in the room.
Right. I'm so much more interested in other people's story than I am my own. I've already lived mine. I'd like to hear about yours.
Yeah. And so tell me about the nonprofit work. Like, how did that come about?
Yeah, that was amazing. Well, in the book, I talk about, the book leaves after I have spent a long amount of time in silence at a kind of a Catholic commune, if you will. And there were 150 people in that commune, and it was mostly silent, and we had to work for everything we had. So I sheared sheep, and I milked cows, and I killed chickens, and you name it. I cleaned other people's handkerchiefs. I mean, it was a crazy, crazy year, but it saved my life. And when I left there, I was really, I really had a hard time coming back into the world, because I remember specifically walking into a grocery store and thinking, why do we have an entire row of bread? We really just need bread. We don't need 17, 27, 58 versions of bread. Just give me a piece of bread.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of imploded a little of all of our choices. And I had the great good fortune of walking to a neighbor's house, and her name is Connie Ning, and she was there for me in a beautiful way. And she said, come to Vietnam with me. And I went to Vietnam with her, and I saw poverty like I had never seen, because we got to travel on a humanitarian visa, which means they couldn't tell us where we could and could not go, even though they tried to.
Yeah. Yeah. And what did you see there that...
So we started a organization called Friendship Bridge, which is microfinance for women, and loan them $100, and they would pay it back with interest, and that money would go to the next woman. And it was amazing to see how resourceful and smart and capable and resilient these women were. So we did that for a long time, probably 100,000 borrowers or so. And then we started another one in Guatemala, same name, and that's still going. And we also put education on top of that. And then we did another nonprofit called Maya Impact that empowers young women through vocal empowerment, through education, through all social collateral, for them to be real leaders in the world. So we have both of those organizations.
Yeah. And so at some point you're doing this work and you haven't shared your story. Is that where you're feeling, is it a subconscious pull at that point, or are you actively aware?
Subconscious, I would say. I think I struggled, to be honest. Worthiness was just such a struggle for me for decades, because I didn't get love from my dad. I got abuse, and I know my mom loved me, but she didn't protect me.
Yeah.
And so when you're not protected and not nurtured and not loved by the people, the very people who should, then it's hard to feel love from others.
Yeah.
So it took me a long time to realize that I was worthy to tell my story.
Mm. I just like honing in on this hard to feel love from others. That's like such a challenge. We dance around this one all the time in fiction, right? And typically in the hero's or the heroine's journey, but it's
Sure.
but in real life, like how do you work with that? How do you transform that?
Yeah, it's a great question. The $1 million question. For me, it was through storytelling and EMDR, doing the therapy to say, I am worthy. There's not a person on the planet that you can't point to and say, how was your childhood? Fill in the blank, right? There's always, or how was your life? Maybe not your childhood, but there's something you can point to that changed, that gave you this fundamental knowing of yourself. And that could be positive or negative, right?
Yeah.
But I would imagine most people have a story in their childhood, whether it's the girl who didn't pick you in 6th grade or not making a team or what have you, but that sent a message of unworthiness in some way, shape, or form. And I think once you can identify what that was and say that out loud, you can say, oh, wait a minute, that needs to bring to the forefront, to the consciousness, so that I can say, well, that did happen to me, and look at me now, I am worthy.
Yeah.
And I was worthy then. I was worthy in that moment that I didn't get picked or didn't make the team or what have you. You were worthy then.
Yeah. It's kind of creating enough distance to see yourself or see your past almost.
Well, what would you tell your best friend, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
We're telling messages to ourselves, but our best friends would never say that about us. So let's stop saying that about us and treat us as our own best friend.
Yeah. Yeah. So how important was for your bee tribe work, bee tribes, when you bring these women together for 6 months, obviously there's this oral storytelling that's happening. Are they encouraged to do other, like hands-on or writing or other kinds of? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We kick it off. Well, I have 2 programs. I have a 3-month program and a 6-month program. I'll talk about the 6-month one because it's fresh on my mind now because I just rented the place in Mexico. So we kick it off at this unbelievable place in Mexico for 4 days. And the women fly in from all over. They don't know each other. And it's fantastic. So we spoil them rotten while we're cracking their heart open. So there's a chef and there's yoga and meditation. And I fly down a healer who's really, really amazing. And she works with all the women. And we go through and we get deep fast. And people are, nervous at first. What's happening? But all of the groups that have graduated have had such fundamental transformations in their life. And like I said, it could be, I've had people leave, 7-figure jobs and say, I can't do this anymore. I've had stay-home moms say, I finally love being a stay-home mom. I've had people say, I've made my money, but I don't know how to be peaceful. And now they're peaceful. So it's whatever you want to work on. And so we end those 4 days, and then we have 6 months where we work together every other week. And I think our special sauce is the curriculum, of course, but it's also that we partner. Each woman partners with another woman twice during the 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
So you've met with everyone twice, and you've done we call them musings and quests. You do those with a partner the week in between when we don't meet.
Yeah.
And it's really beautiful because you get that vulnerability and that heart connection, and you're working on some tough stuff. You're working on forgiveness, and you're working on making amends to people, and you're working on what are the unconscious patterns that no longer serve you, and you're working on agreements versus expectations with yourself. And so there's a lot of things that we work on, and then at the end of this 6 months we come together again in the Rocky Mountains, and we have another retreat where we just celebrate each other.
Yeah.
It's so magical.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds really cool. Like it would be addictive and also, draining at times, I imagine, to hold that. So how do you, it's not really related to storytelling necessarily, but maybe it's useful to hear. How do you make sure you're going to have the energy to hold that?
That's a great question. I've never been asked that. I am a holder. I am a sacred space keeper. I am a vault. I always wanted what I'm giving to women. And so it's not hard for me. It's innate for me. Am I tired at the end? Sure. But I'm not really, I might be physically tired because there's a lot of running around and stuff, but
yeah,
I am so much more me when I get to give that to a woman. So it fuels me. It doesn't take anything away.
Yeah. Yeah. And is that, I assume there's something about that quality of the way you show up that was felt by, let's say, I'm trying to figure out how to bridge this in, but it feels like a good time. So you have a relationship with Dr. Jane Goodall.
I do.
Yeah. And I'm curious to learn more about that, like first how you met her, but then how you earned her trust.
Yeah, that's great. I love Jane. I love her. And I feel so blessed to count her as a friend. I was just talking about this in Clubhouse, actually, how this all came to be. And it's kind of funny because really it was asking. It was, I wanted to meet her. And why, if not me, then who, right? Mm-hmm. It was one of those worthy things that I really want to meet her. Can I meet her? Yeah. Can I meet her? So we just, and when I say we, it was my husband at the time. And we just kept calling JGI and saying, we would love to meet her. We would love to meet her. I would love to introduce her on a panel. I would love to, anything, give me something.
Yeah.
So I got to do all of that. I got to, we eventually said, had her for dinner at our house. And I'm not a big gala girl. I do love my nice shoes, but I don't love the gala scene, let's do a big gala. And so instead we kind of rented her for the day, right? You get like 12 hours, and we committed to raising a certain sum of money. And so instead we just walked her around Boulder. We walked her to schools. We walked her to business. We walked her on the creek path and just let people talk to her. And it was I think it was life-giving for her to not be standing in front of a camera and taking 300 more pictures. And, and so she really loved that. And then we funded it with, we just had 12 people at our house for dinner, and everybody paid a high price, and we enjoyed the outdoor. We had it all outside, and we only had a few tables, and she sat at every table. So every course she changed tables. And so at the end, everybody had a very personal interaction with her.
Yeah.
And then we went and drank scotch in my writing studio. It was awesome. And then she read my book. She was one of my first readers.
Yeah.
And I was scared to death to give it to her. I mean, I think I was shaking from head to toe. Will
Did,
you read it?
did you bring it up during your scotch drinking
I
time? Or
did. I did. Well,
yeah.
she was in my writing studio, so it was perfect. It was a
Was it
perfect.
easier to bring up then than after she expressed interest in reading it?
Oh yeah, right. It really was. Yeah. So, but she was so fantastic. I mean, she read it, and she actually did she's actually on the cover of my book. You know, the back jacket, or I guess, which was amazing. So she gave me courage to put it out there. Really,
Yeah.
why wouldn't you? Right? And I was like, why wouldn't I? Right? Because if I don't, I wouldn't have done my mission in life.
Yeah.
And then I got to go. What the greatest gift was that she kind of asked me to be her story keeper.
Yeah.
And so I went on a journey with her for probably 2 years of just, sometimes I pinch myself that I got to do this, but we just went all over. I went to Africa with her. I got to sit with the chimps with her. I stayed in her houses in Africa. Her house in Gambia is so beautifully simple. I mean, I was standing there, we were setting up the cameras and et cetera, because we were doing it behind the scenes as well. Yeah. And I said, oh, Jane, where's the restroom? And she's like, oh yeah, go out the front door and turn left. And then at the second tree, you're going to see. And I thought, what? She doesn't even have a bathroom in her house in Africa. So, she's so real, and she's so down to earth. And I just feel blessed that I got to do that and meet her grandchildren and meet her son and interview them all. And it was really an incredible gift.
Yeah. What does it mean to be a story keeper?
Wow.
Or what do you think she meant? And then after doing it for 2 years, what does it mean to you now?
Yeah. Well, so she used towards the end, maybe halfway through and toward the end, she said, people would ask her a question and she would say, ask Keele. She knows my story better than I do. Because I went deep. I mean, I optioned the book, her biography book from Dale Peterson. So I optioned that. I interviewed him for days, maybe a week. And I knew I found stuff that that is not in the public eye. And she was, I don't know. I don't know if it was pleasantly surprised or just surprised. Yeah. But I found a bunch of stuff that wasn't out, and I asked her permission if I could, tell the world that story, because I think we're all complicated human beings, and we all had hard decisions to make. And when I presented the things I wanted to say to her or say about her and some of her decisions, I was so incredibly impressed with her response, which was, she said, well, Keele, it's all true.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay. And the only things she didn't want me to divulge were things that protected other people, which was impressive as well.
So this links back to the very earliest thing you said, which is, the stories we don't say out loud. Right?
Yes.
Seems to be a theme there.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So what's happening with that work?
The stories that we don't want to say out loud?
Oh, no. But as far as the 2 years you spent trailing Jane Goodall and the option on her book and all that.
So it will be, it's currently under contract, and it will be the first feature film on Jane's amazing journey. There's been tons and tons of documentaries, but there's not the feature film.
So it's a dramatized kind of...
It will be, yes. And it will be, and she's so cute. She says, I just can't imagine looking at the screen and someone else being me. It'll be the first time that will happen.
Yeah. Is that with Disney? Did I see?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's exciting.
Oh, yeah, I'll say so. It's fantastic. Yes.
Do you remember the day that became a reality?
For me, the reality of being able to be with her is better than anything.
Yeah.
And I don't know what is going to happen with the Disney piece of it. So I just feel my moments are seeing the chimps with her.
Yeah.
That's my moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
and meeting her beautiful grandchildren and traveling with her. Those are my moments.
Yeah. It must be interesting to like spend that time because you get to be, I imagine, outside of yourself, like truly leave behind your routines
Mm.
and rituals and, you know,
Yeah, we slept on Gombe Beach. We just
yeah.
slept on the rocks. I also slept in her house, in her house that she and Hugo shared.
Yeah.
But the last few nights, I just thought I need to be outside, and just the baboons are there, and I mean, it was just amazing. It was incredible.
Well, yeah. And I guess what I'm getting at is you, when you leave behind your rituals and, your habits, like, did you learn something about yourself?
I learned that I love silence. I had
Mm.
known that from my time at Madonna House when I was younger, but I had gotten busy. Again, I had 3 boys I was raising, and trying to write and.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to really just turn off. I mean, there was no internet there. To just turn it off and unplug and listen from the inside out and be with nature. I mean, walking in the jungle. We walked to the waterfall that Jane has written about a lot, about seeing the chimpanzees in their waterfall dance, she calls it. And we walked there, and I just sat under that waterfall with the rain, with the water hitting my head, and it was just, it was a spiritual experience for sure.
Yeah.
Absolute spiritual experience.
Your dog agrees.
Yes, that's my Xavier. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
He's cute.
Well, you did your year away in commune, and imagining how you told me how difficult it was to kind of come back from that. Did you have a difficult reentry from being unplugged?
Yeah, it was like baptism by fire. Yes. Like I said, I had 3 kids, and we were doing a huge house project. And I mean, yeah, it was a little bit of insanity. But, I work well in chaos. My my childhood taught me that. And it gave me that gift. I'll take that. And it gave me my intuition. So, but it was nothing like coming back from being silent for a year and coming back into this crazy world.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And because we had also gone to the UK to interview people, we had gone to St. Martin to interview the woman who actually chose Jane to be on the cover of National Geographic, which launched her fame. So we went all over the place.
Yeah.
Which has its own chaos, right?
I imagine so. Yes.
And traveling with our film crew, and I got a shout out to Jeff Orlowski. He was our video, and he was amazing. Jeff has recently done The Social Dilemma, the movie.
Yeah.
You haven't seen it? It's fantastic. He did Chasing Coral and Chasing Ice, and so we got really close because we hired him to go with us and film it all. So that was really fun too.
Yeah. Do you want to make more movies or be involved in that process?
Well, I'm actually in development right now to take Wholly Unraveled to the screen. So that's
cool. Yeah.
So exciting. I mean, to see my story come on the screen, and I'm pinching myself, to say the least.
That's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you think the world would be different if we were all able to tell the stories that we keep silent and don't share?
There would be so much more connection. We're living in this world where there's more ways to connect than there ever has been, and yet we're more apart than we've ever have been.
Yeah.
And there's more divisiveness than there ever has been. And so I believe, in my heart of hearts, I believe it's, if we could share our stories, especially the ones we don't want to say out loud, we would have a camaraderie and a connection and a oneness. Mm-hmm. And we would say, wow, that happened to me too. How did you get through it? Or compassion. If it didn't happen to you, you'd have compassion.
Mm-hmm.
And if it did happen to you, you'd have empathy, and there would be so much more peace and so much less divisiveness.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I agree with a lot of that. Maybe all of it. it's there's almost like in every culture it seems like there's undercurrents of like this battle, this tug and pull between, and it's really about that.
Yeah.
And like, what is it that we're protecting by enforcing silence?
Right. Well, I don't believe that you can. I believe that anyone that has done anything terrible in this world or has done anything great in this world, they all have their story. And it's what you do with your story, right? Because Hitler has a story, and what he did with that was atrocious.
Yeah.
And bad things happened to him. And that doesn't give him never justify what he did.
Yeah.
But it's all about, bad things happen. And our responsibility when a bad thing happens is to try to make it into something else that can be of service to other people.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe a key word is in there is worthiness, right?
Absolutely.
I imagine your story about your worthiness goes a long way toward your story about other people's worthiness.
Yes. Worthiness. Worthy is in my essence statement, which is who I am. I am worthy.
Mm.
Yeah. But, that took decades and lots of money.
Yeah. And
it's like the pretty woman comment. And Richard Gere says, I am mad at my mother. And he's like, I am mad at my mother. And he said, it took me $10,000 to say that. and I love Flannery O'Connor, speaking of authors. He says, if you've had a childhood, then you have enough to write about for the rest of your life.
Mm. Yeah.
Because I meet a lot of people on the road and in my work that say, well, I didn't have trauma like you did. But, that's not, it may be accurate in action, but your worst trauma might have felt like my worst trauma.
Yeah.
And we don't know. It's not rungs on a ladder that you're better or worse, or my trauma's better or worse. And we're going to we're going to do a clubhouse on that. My friend Stephanie Arnold and I are going to do a clubhouse on that kind of concept of no one gets to trump on trauma.
Yeah. Yeah. And even if trauma is not your word, like there's the other word that starts with TR, which is truth, right? And I think people get the message that owning their truth or sharing their truth could lead to them being ostracized, right? Or
Absolutely.
othered, and shamed. And that's not just a belief, right? That's often true.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love that. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Trauma and truth.
There you go.
Mm-hmm. Want to do a clubhouse with me?
Sure. On trauma and truth. I say yes slightly, but yeah, of course. I mean, this is core to my message too, and why, we're talking on the Fearless Storyteller, right?
Right.
And, different people have expressed it in different ways. Like if you're into comedy or writing comedy, you understand that a good joke contains, it's the truth plus pain, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. What's something you don't want to say out loud?
What's something I don't want to say out loud? Something, I guess, that would hurt or compromise somebody else would be a big one. I guess Jane Goodall shared that as well. But, I've done, a couple decades of unraveling and being willing to expose more and more of myself. And the rewards have always been greater and greater, I feel.
Well, there's nothing to hide. I don't have anything to hide.
Yeah. And, it's 2021. I'd be remiss if I didn't say And I'm white and I'm male
Mhm.
and I live in the United States, and really just about the worst thing that can happen to me really is being shunned by
Mm.
people that I don't care about.
Mhm. Hmm. There's always going to be someone who likes you and someone who doesn't like you, right?
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. But I'm lucky in that sense, right? Like I can share my truth. I have the privilege of sharing my truth, and I feel like I need to cash in on that on
Mm.
behalf of people who can't.
There's a responsibility. I agree. That's how I always felt about my nonprofit work is I need to be their voice because they don't have a voice.
Yeah. And as soon as somebody wants to have it, take their voice and use it, great. I'm not going to tell your story. Right.
No, that's when we've won.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, so how has COVID been for you?
Mm. I think like everyone else, it was a lot of pivoting. I learned to not like that word very much. Um, I was about to launch my tribes in Mexico in
Yeah.
April.
Yeah.
So I had to shut everything down.
Yeah.
That was tough. That was really tough. And um, what we did was come up with our 3-month program, and we did it all on Zoom, which was magical and fantastic and a whole different curriculum. And so now we have all new course, which is great. Um, it brought me closer to a lot of people, because I feel like you get your COVID cohorts, right? The
Yeah.
people that you were going to go through this with. And I got really close to them.
Yeah.
And it was hard on my kids. The hardest thing for me was to watch my kids not have their childhood
Mm.
and to sit inside rather than go to basketball practice.
Yeah.
And my kids were extremely nervous about their dad getting it
Yeah.
because their dad felt compromised.
Yeah.
And so my 2 boys, my 15-year-old twins, decided not to see anyone. One had a cohort; he was allowed to see 3 or 4 people. The other one decided not to see one single other soul, and that's devastating
Yeah.
devastating. But thank God, my husband's now vaccinated, and they're going to play basketball, and
Mm-hmm.
so I'm so happy we're at the tail end of this.
Yeah.
How
Well,
was
good.
it for you?
Yeah, I have a family, I've got a wife and, you know, and a 20-year-old from my, gosh, I can't use husband because it doesn't work.
Was wife.
Yeah. Got a 20-year-old son who I haven't seen since the pandemic started,
Oh, wow.
and a 5-year-old daughter
Mm,
who misses him very much and
yeah.
has also been pretty isolated. We had a pod family for a while that we did
Mm,
some
mhm.
homeschool with, and I think we're going to very much appreciate each new layer of access we get back to our communities, for sure.
Absolutely. I flew to LA I was in LA all last week, and it was so wonderful, wonderful. It
Mm.
was another author and a executive producer, and then a TED Talk curator, and the 4 of us had never met,
Mm.
and we descended on this house in the hills, and just it felt so life-giving to be
Yeah.
meeting people and to be talking and to not cook with the same people.
Right.
We didn't even go anywhere. We didn't go
Yeah,
anywhere. We stayed in the house, and it was so lovely.
probably people who are willing to show up and be present and vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just to be able to travel again, I can't wait. I go to New York tomorrow, and
Yeah.
I'm a traveler. I need to be on the road. I love home too, but I love to travel. So it's great to be back.
Yeah. Yeah. We get to road trip this summer to visit some friends who have a baby who's 6 months already, and
Mm,
that'll be fun.
COVID baby.
COVID baby.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then there's always the COVID puppy. I got a COVID puppy, of course.
Oh, did
He's
you?
now a year old. But wasn't that funny? All of a sudden, everybody had a puppy. There was like a run on puppies on the internet. It's like, I couldn't find the puppy. And I ended up with the perfect puppy.
That's great. Well, that's lovely. is there anything you'd like to share or promote before we're done, as far as how people can find you and your work?
Yes, yeah. Please come find me on Instagram, Keele Burgin. I love to interact with people. So find us there. You can find me at keeleburgin.com. I'm also just beginning on the Clubhouse world, which I'm really loving, and I'm Keele Burgin there as well. It's nice to have a name like Keele Burgin because no one else has it,
Yes.
which is great. I had to change it to get it, but the other thing would be Insight Timer. I'm a firm believer in meditation, and so I have a few meditations up on Insight Timer, which is a free app that you can download my meditations. I have ones for being where your hands are, so to help you be in the moment.
Nice.
A morning meditation, so you can check those out. And we are starting a Bee Tribe in September. It's going to be the 6-month version, so the 2 retreats, 12 women. It's highly curated. It's going to be amazing. And we just announced that it's opening for registration. So if anyone would like to, and it depends if it's really great. If you go to Keele Burgin, you'll see Bee Tribes, and you can contact us there. There's a little application, and then we put you in touch with our partnership team, and we're off to the races.
Cool.
And I'd love to meet anyone who would like to do that. And then, of course, please read Wholly Unraveled so we can heal the world through storytelling.
If you don't mind sharing, I don't know if you are you doing a retreat kickoff for this one?
We are doing the retreat kickoff September 30th through October 2nd.
All right. Well, you have to sell this a little bit then. So, for those of us who are motivated by sunshine and all that. So where is this going to be?
It is Riviera Maya in Mexico. I rent, and it's this time around I'm renting this beautiful, beautiful hacienda. And there's 16 bedrooms. There's 5 full staff. There's, you name it. There's a pool. It's right on the ocean. I fly, we do yoga and meditation in the morning. I said earlier, we fly down a healer who's just fantastic named Zoe. And she works with each of the women on energetically what they would like to work on. And we go deep, and we go deep fast, and we really connect with one another. And, it's amazing. Your heart gets cracked open in such a beautiful way. And we'd love to have you. So put in an application. Let's do it.
Yeah. All right. Well, Keele Burgin, it's been a pleasure having you on the show.
I really enjoyed meeting you. Thank you for having me.
I hope you've enjoyed today's episode of The Fearless Storyteller. As a reminder, any and all links can be found in the show notes. And if you're enjoying this podcast, will you please consider leaving a review? By doing so, you'll be helping new listeners discover the Fearless Storyteller podcast.